What's going on, y'all? Today I'm going to be making a video that's been requested quite a bit, which is to just make a general rogue guide. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, just be making a rogue guide. Some things to note before getting into this guide. This information is very specific to the type of playstyle and build that I play. So it's not going to cover all of the rogue playstyles and builds because I'm just kind of like a one trick, I guess you could say, at the particular playstyle that I play. That playstyle, I would call it sort of a fairly aggressive ambush build. I'm not sitting indoors waiting for people most of the time, but I do a lot of pushing people with ambush, with stealth, and that's kind of the playstyle that I do. I'm not the best rogue player in the game. Mechanically, I'm not that good, but I think that my positioning and my timing are very good, and that's what makes this build work for me. So I'm just going to show you my stats to show you how this build is working for me. So I've got the Demigod on this character. My KD is pretty good. Let me show you the other characters. These are newer characters that I've made. This one's just 10 and 1, 9 and 2, 5 and 2. 42 and 2, 9 and 1 in duos, and 10 and 0. So I also only play solos, so all of these stats are solos. 34 and 6, 7 and 13. This is a character I used to mine a lot, so there's a lot more deaths on this character. 63 and 2, 6 and 0, 3 and 0. 71 and 5, 30 and 1, 23 and 4. Yes, so basically I was able to get to Demigod running a pretty particular build. It kind of changed throughout to the wipe due to how the meta has shifted. But I'm just going to go through the perks and skills right now that I use. So for the most part, this entire wipe, ever since double jump got removed, I've been using creep. Creep is a really good perk. I've talked about this in a lot of videos. I think it's very strong in solos. Highly recommend it if you haven't used it. It's an awesome ability. Makes your footsteps impossible to hear, basically. I have a lot of things to talk about with creep. So basically with creep, you don't want to be barefoot if you're using creep. It's actually louder than just wearing shoes when you use creep because the foot slap sounds are more audible than the boot sounds. So always wear boots when you're using creep. Another thing, Lightfoot boots, rugged boots, adventure boots, dashing boots, those all are essentially the same volume level, same sound. But the quietest boots in the game are actually old shoes, and then I think lace turn shoes are second. Heavy boots are pretty loud, as you can tell from barbarians walking around. And a peculiar thing, though, that I think not a lot of people know is that Cobalt Lightfoot boots actually share the sound with heavy boots. So Cobalt Lightfoot boots are actually very loud. Interestingly, though, Copper Light Lightfoot boots share the same sound with regular Lightfoot boots. Another thing, if you're falling, hold, crouch, and shift walk so that so you're holding crouch and walk at the same time. When you land, it'll make less sound. Just a good idea to do that. But and all this works better with creep. So creep basically, you're still audible. Your boots make like a squeak sound, and that squeak sound is still very audible when you're using creep. But like the low rumbles that the noise of boots make is very diminished when you're using creep. Very difficult to hear, especially when you're walking on wood. When you're walking on wood, your boots do not make that squeak sound. So if you're crouch walking on wood, it is almost impossible to hear you. So creep is awesome. I love creep. Even if they reverted double jump back to its old state, I would still use creep. And then I use stealth, which gives you 10 steps when using hide. Hide has always been a part of my build. It's always going to be a part of my build. It's such a good skill, and it's essential for the ambush playstyle. And you just have to take stealth if you're using hide. Stealth is really good for the type of build that I run, which is that aggressive ambush build that I was talking about. So basically, what I use stealth for is I don't like to sit and hide when I use hide. I like to push people around corners and stuff, and stealth lets you do that. It lets you reposition when you're in hide. If you're just going to play pure landmine and sit behind doors and wait for people, I wouldn't even take stealth. Then there's no benefit to you if you're just playing landmine like that. But if you're playing like an aggressive build that wants to push people, take stealth 100%. Ambush. This is just such a strong perk if you're running hide. I think it's necessary. Basically, it just has to be in your build if you're running hide. Yeah, it's just too good. Too much damage to give up. A note about this is it says 50% physical damage bonus for 3 seconds after leaving hide. That's not true. It is only for the first hit within 3 seconds after leaving hide. So the tooltip is wrong there. And then this is the most flex perk right here, is this 4th slot back attack. I have been experimenting with a lot of different things for this 4th perk, and I've landed on either back attack or dagger mastery. Actually, right now I'm probably more favoring dagger mastery because I do find myself fighting people from the side or the front quite often. Back attack is insane if you can ambush someone though. Like there's nothing stronger than this perk if you can get behind people. But I think in general, dagger mastery is going to be better. 50% damage bonus when using daggers. Doesn't work if you're using rapiers, obviously. I use daggers. I do not like to use rapier. I really dislike the swings and the attack pattern of the rapier. I was using short sword for a very long time until they nerfed it. And short sword worked great with back attack because back attack works with swords. But yeah, dagger mastery works great if you're using daggers. And then cutthroat. I take cutthroat, and I've been using cutthroat pretty much ever since they nerfed weak point. I think they removed the damage bonus from weak point, and then they changed the PDR reduction to be pure armor reduction. That's when I switched to cutthroat. For the longest time, I really thought cutthroat was awful. I really thought it was a horrible ability for the longest time. And then I started using it, and I realized, okay, well, this perk, it's actually like it really makes sense to use it. It's very good. I can go into this very in depth, and I will. So basically, my reasoning for taking cutthroat is weak point is essentially only good against plate users, and that's like heavy plate users with a lot of PDR. And the thing about those plate users, really the only issue there is fighter. Cleric is no problem. You literally only take weak point to fight plate fighter. That's the only reason to use weak point. The thing about plate fighter, though, is that they have falchions, and they're going to be using falchions. A falchion can two-shot you. Pretty much no matter how geared you are going to get two-shot by a geared plate fighter with a falchion. So basically, if you don't have weak point, it's going to take you like 10 hits to kill a plate fighter with a falchion. If you have weak point, it's going to take you like 7. And if you have thrust, it's going to take you 5. So it's going to take you 5 hits to kill someone who can just turn around and 2-tap you way faster with a falchion. Sure, weak point and thrust are better for fighting plate fighters, but it's still the matchup is so 50-50. Like you're gonna die anyway just because they can turn around and 2-tap you. Bad fighters, yeah, they're gonna die, but good fighters, they're gonna turn around and 2-tap you. So weak point and thrust, they're okay if you're extremely geared. I will say, if you are like very end game geared, weak point and thrust are good because then you can actually like 3 to 4 tap plate. But that requires a very good gear set to run, which most people don't have. The thing about cutthroat is that it is good against every single class in the game. Weak point is only good against plate fighter. Cutthroat is good against every single class in the game. It's actually so good that it basically makes a few of the classes completely free loot pinatas. If you hit a wizard with cutthroat, that is free loot. If you hit a warlock with Cutthroat, that is free loot. If you hit a Ranger with Cutthroat, that is free loot. These classes are literally just so destroyed by Cutthroat. It's awesome. I mean, it sucks for them, but it's awesome for us. Yeah, they can't do anything if they get hit. They're totally silenced. Another thing Cutthroat does is it takes off abilities that apply on your weapon and then apply on the next attack, like Rupture. So when you activate Rupture, it puts a buff on your weapon and it activates on your next hit. But if you hit someone that has Rupture active with Cutthroat, it will take Rupture off of their weapon. And so this is pretty good for fighting other rogues because it'll take Rupture off of their weapon. It'll take, weak point off of their weapon. It'll take Achilles Strike off of a Barbarian. It'll take Adrenaline Strike off a fighter. And most importantly, it'll take Blow of Corruption off of a Warlock's weapon. Blow of Corruption will one-tap you. Without it, you're safe. You're not going to get one-tapped by Blow of Corruption. So Cutthroat is a very good ability. Does not cancel active abilities like Sprint or Second Wind, but it still prevents them from being activated in the first place. So what's happened a couple times is I've hit a fighter with Cutthroat, and then they just turn around and try to run away. I can only assume they're just trying to spam Sprint and Second Wind, but they're potatoing and they don't know what's going on, and so they just die because they don't turn around and fight because they're just trying to hit their ability, wondering why it's not working. That'll happen sometimes, but only with bad players. But yeah, I have to say Cutthroat is extremely strong. It makes a few of the classes just completely free when you hit them with it. I highly recommend everyone take Cutthroat. Awesome ability. The other skills, I'll just go through the other perks and skills. So Caltrops, this is such a worthless skill. You should never use Caltrops. It is so bad. Not only does it do barely any damage, it's barely even works. The Caltrop that it actually puts on the ground, it's like a single little spike with a very, very small radius. So even if you put it in a doorway, someone can walk around it pretty much, unless it's dead center in the doorway. And they can just jump over it. Yeah, Caltrops are just really bad. I wouldn't take Caltrops unless you're memeing or something. Rupture's actually not bad. It's probably better than Weak Point, in my opinion. It's good with hand crossbow mastery. I would say if you're running hand crossbow mastery, take Rupture. Very good ability then. But again, that is not my playstyle. That is not the build that I run, so I'm not going to really. But yeah, that's what a lot of people do. Rupture, hand crossbow, and then smoke pot. That's pretty much the hand crossbow build. Smoke pot, for a long time I also thought smoke pot was really bad and totally a meme ability. And then I think recently I've realized, a lot of people have realized smoke pot is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good because there's so many barbarians in the game. And I'll get into this later in the video when I talk about the class matchups. But yeah, Smoke Pot basically makes it impossible for people to catch you in melee. So if you just want to purely survive and never die, take Smoke Pot. Just don't PvP. Take Smoke Pot and hide. You will hardly ever die. No one will be able to chase you. No one will be able to catch you. Good ability if you're just trying to survive. Tumble. This ability is so bad. You can use it if you want. It's a meme. It's a meme ability. It's extremely bad. Not much else to it. And then yeah, Weak Point reduces armor rating by 30 for 3 seconds when you hit them. So think about Weak Point. When you first hit them with Weak Point, it doesn't apply to the hit that you hit them with to apply it. It's only the hits after. So basically you hit them and then it applies and then you have 3 seconds to deal more damage while their armor rating is reduced by 30. The 30 is not very much. And also this is for armor rating bonus. This isn't PDR. So it's actually very, very weak. Deceptively weak. Weak Point used to be extremely strong. It used to give you a plus 50% damage bonus. Kind of like Ambush. And then it would reduce it would reduce PDR by 50%. And when it was like that, Weak Point was insanely good. You could actually fight plate and kill them in 3 hits. But yeah, those days are long gone. Weak Point is very bad now, unless you're extremely geared, like I said. Alright, so now I'm going to get into the rest of these perks. Back attack, I talked about this already. It's good if you can get behind people. Otherwise, take Dagger Mastery or something else. Double jump. Okay, double jump. I used to run this all the time before they nerfed it and added the movement speed penalty. And once they nerfed it, I switched to creep, and then I'm so convinced now of creep's strength that even if they would revert double jump, I would continue to use creep. But there are so many benefits to double jump. It's a very, very good ability if you can make up the movement speed loss. You get a lot of routes that you can run through maps with double jump. There's a lot of things you can jump on top of to get away from people. You can double jump in a fight and have people enforce leg hits and arm hits and stuff and take less damage. Very good ability if you can make it work. Hand crossbow mastery, good ability. This is one of the viable rogue builds. You just run hand crossbow, rupture, pretty strong. I don't like using ranged weapons. I'm very bad at hand crossbow and ranged weapons in general, so I don't run this. But yeah, not a bad perk. Could be a flex perk if you wanted to swap out something. Hidden pockets. This is the worst ability. This is the worst perk in the game. I would not even run this. I mean, you can just drag and take things off of your utility slot, like that. Bam, that's hidden pockets right there. But also, it doesn't even matter to take things off your utility slot because everyone is running with reshaders and max gamma anyway. Like, they're gonna see you in the dark. It doesn't matter if you have the potions on your waist, you know. Hide mastery. If you want to just sit behind a doorway and landmine, I guess it works. But even then, I really don't see much point to it because if someone's coming through a doorway, you shouldn't stealth until you hear the door opening anyway. I don't know. I just don't think Hide Mastery is very good. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're just super ratty. Jokester. A lot of people like to run Jokester. +2 all attributes is very, very good. That's very, very strong. I think Jokester is very good when you have very little gear, like at level 1. And then once I think you hit level 15, I think Jokester stops being useful. +2 all, it is very good, but the rest of the perks are just so much better. You know what I mean? You're sacrificing very strong things like plus 50% physical damage bonus, silent footsteps, 50% physical damage power, 10 steps while stealth. You're sacrificing all of that just to have like 2% more damage and like 4 health and 0.6% movement speed, which I don't find that to be more useful than everything else that you can possibly run. Lockpicking mastery. This is good at like level 1 again, or when you're very ungeared. When it's early in wipe, I think this is okay to take. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, you can just have lockpicks, and this perk is made irrelevant. Pickpocket, pretty much just a meme ability. I mean, it's fun. I've never ran it. There's lots of funny videos online of people pickpocketing. Certainly is fun content, but if you're trying to be like competitive, it's not viable. Why pickpocket when you can just kill someone? I mean, if you're close enough to pickpocket someone, you're close enough to just stab them and kill them. So, poison weapon. I have had a kind of love-hate relationship with poison weapon. In theory, it's really good. Basically, the way I like to think about this is every time you hit someone, +1 true magic damage. I like to think of this ability as being +1 true magic damage per hit. You can try and stack magical damage to get the damage higher on this, but it has half scaling, so you're going to need like 2 magic damage to add 1 magic damage to this. But yeah, poison weapon's pretty good against plate. In a sense, it's kind of like thrust and weak point, because plate has very low magic resist. So in a way, this is like dealing true damage to plate. But the damage is delayed. So that's the only thing I don't really like, is the damage is delayed. When you're a rogue, you want to ambush people, you want to kill them fast. You don't want to delay and have them die over a long time, because the longer a fight lasts, the more likely you are to die as a rogue. But this does work very well with hand crossbow, because it works on hand crossbow. I think it also works on throwing knives too. But yeah, poison weapon's great if you're trying to just do like a hit and run kind of thing. It doesn't really work against clerics because they have that thing that makes them take like 3 less damage from all sources or something. Doesn't really work against barbarians either, because they all run iron well. Poison weapon, honestly, it's not that bad. Definitely better than some of the other perks. Shadowrunner, this is a very good ability. No longer activates when you come out of an invis pot, but when you come out of stealth, you get 10% movement speed for 3 seconds. That's pretty good. If you are running a higher damage build and you want to make up for the movement speed that you're losing, Shadowrunner is a pretty good option. Or if you want to just run really fast while you have your weapons equipped and chase someone down coming out of stealth, Shadowrunner's not a bad option. You know, if I was going to drop creep, I'd probably take Shadowrunner. Very useful ability. 10%'s a lot of movement speed. Thrust, while using a dagger, gain an additional 20% armor pen. Again, like weak point, thrust is deceptively bad. It sounds a lot better than it is. It really does not give you that much more damage. And it's only armor pen, it's not PDR. So not a whole lot of use against anything except plate wearers. You know, my philosophy on thrust here is like really only take it with weak point. Only take it if you're going to take weak point 2. And in that scenario, you also need to be extremely geared. Trap detection highlights nearby traps. You know, this ability, I always wish that I could run trap detection. I wish I could run trap detection, but everything else is just so much better. The only time you would ever take trap detection is for detecting ranger traps, but it's pretty easy once you play the game a lot to kind of scan the ground for traps. But there are times when rangers put traps in like really weird random spots in shadows randomly, and then you get caught in those sometimes. And that's when trap detection would be good. But at the moment, Ranger's pretty weak. I think Ranger's pretty easy to counter, you know? Don't fight them at ranged and you have no problem. Trap detection, yeah, I don't know. It's fun, it's useful, but everything else, all the other perks are just better. So no reason to take it. Okay, so now we're gonna get into gear in this video, the gear I like to run. So right now, weapons, I think the strongest weapon right now for daggers is the Chris. And I think the strongest weapon, you know, if you're not going to run daggers, is Rapier, obviously. Rapier is very good. It has a good range, good poking capabilities. But I personally don't like running Rapier, so I run daggers. I think the Chris right now is very, very good. It has a very good 4-hit combo. Basically, it's a side slash, an overhand swing, and then a stab and twist at the very end, which are very quick. The first 2 hits, very easy to headshot. And then because the last 3 and 4 hits are a stab twist, they're very easy to land and just confirm some final little damage to kill someone. So at the moment, the build that I like to run is a Chris in the main hand and then a offhand like Castellan or Stiletto that has +2 weapon damage. This character doesn't have one right now. Let me go find a character that does. Okay, so this character, so what I like to do right now is I'm running Chris. Try to find one with weapon damage if you can. This one has 27 weapon damage, 2% armor pen. The offhand has +2 weapon damage and +1.8% armor pen. So the reason to do this is your offhand weapon stats will apply to your main hand weapon stats and vice versa if they're both equipped at the same time, dual wielding. So what this essentially does is this adds +2 weapon damage to the Chris, and it adds the armor penetration to the Chris. So really this is a 29 weapon damage Chris, which is very strong, basically a Castellan. You do lose a lot of movement speed when you do this, but I find that when you're ambushing people, you don't really need movement speed. At least in the lower ranks. You need movement speed in the higher ranks. But in the lower ranks, you don't need movement speed when you're ambushing people. You just hit them a couple times and then you sheath and you run away if there's another person or something, or if they don't die. If you want to get your movement speed back, you just hit X, you sheath your weapons, and you run away. So it's not like you're having -20 movement speed all the time. And then otherwise, basically for when I got to Demigod, what I was doing was I was building movement speed. So I would have a lot of gear like copper light gear, with Agi. Copperlight has innate movement speed bonuses on it. So I would be running gear like this and some gloves, Copperlight gloves, and then I would try to find like an Agi, Shadow Mask, yeah, stuff like that. So I would try, basically what I was trying to do is I was trying to get to movement cap. And it's not too difficult to get to movement cap as a rogue, but you have to dedicate a lot of your gear towards it. And the reason I wanted to get to movement cap was because movement speed is very, very strong in solos. Because if someone chases you, and you don't have movement speed, you're just dead. You're just dead. Especially with how many barbarians are running around right now in the higher ranks. You need movement speed or you're just going to die. But yeah, otherwise in the low ranks, you can easily get away with just building damage. And currently what I like to do is build dexterity. Let me see if I have a character with dexterity. Yeah, so this character has a lot of dexterity. 37% action speed. So 37% action speed with a 28 weapon damage Chris. So this is a build that I recently kind of came into knowledge of. What I've been doing is just building a lot of dexterity, so like Wanderer's attire, cloth pants, adventure boots, yeah, dex rings. I really think dexterity is very, very strong if you're doing an ambush build because you want to get as much damage off as possible as fast as you can. You can build strength. Strength is good too, but I think getting one more hit in is worth more than having the previous hits do a little bit more damage, if you know what I mean. But yeah, if you're building movement speed, I recommend loose trousers, copper-like gear, Shadow Mask. Shadow Mask is basically required if you're playing Rogue at any time. Shadow Mask is the best headpiece you can take. Loose trousers are going to be the best pants you can take 90% of the time, unless you're building damage. I mean, that's pretty much it for gear. I think gearing Rogue is pretty straightforward. Basically, you want to prioritize vigor, strength, and agility. For the most part, if you're ranking. A lot of people like to build high vigor on Rogue. I think that works. That's a good idea. But I think Rogue still, even if you have 20 more health, you're still getting 2-shot or 3-shot by the other classes. So it's not like you have to stack a lot of vigor to take yourself from being 2-shot to 3-shot. It takes a lot of effort. You can get rogue up to like 160 health in very, very end game gear, but that is very expensive and very, very time consuming to get there. So yeah, I'd say if you're trying to rank up, I recommend just taking movement speed. Okay, for this next section of the video, I'm gonna just kind of go over the matchups for each class as a rogue and kind of how I approach them, what to do. So first, we're going to start off with Barbarian and fighting Barbs. So right now, Barbarian is very, very strong. They're the strongest solo class in the game by a long shot. So my advice right now, generally, for fighting Barbarian, my advice is that you do not fight them at all and just run away. At the higher ranks, you need 350 movement speed or run smoke pot to counter the barbarians in these high rank lobbies, because they're going to have high movement speed. They're going to be movement speed capped when they use rage. They might be movement speed capped with a weapon out when they use rage. And if you do not have the MS to match that or smoke pot, you are just going to die. There's nothing you can do about it. It sucks. It's very frustrating to play against. But you can get away with building damage, more damage, less movement speed at lower ranks, but at higher ranks, it really is essential to have movement speed or smoke pot, or you're just going to get ran down and 1 or 2 tapped. You need to leave doors open behind you so you have somewhere to run and close the doors behind you if you're being chased by these high movement speed barbs. Otherwise, you're just going to be cornered and die. And if their movement speed is higher and you are being chased, best thing you can do is to just loop around a solid object like a pillar or something until rage wears off. It works sometimes, if the movement speed difference really is a lot higher, they're gonna catch you on the loop. But if you are looping, it does kind of make their weapons harder to hit you, depending on which way you're looping around something. If you do decide to fight a barb, I would say never engage head on. Only engage out of an ambush. Ideally, at a time when they don't have like a weapon equipped, like they're drinking a potion or looting something. If they have a Zweihander, don't even try to fight them. Just hit them once out of ambush and then run. That's really the best you can do. Same with Bardiche and Quarterstaff. With a dagger, you cannot weave in and out of Zwei, Bardiche, or Quarterstaff swings. You will lose. You can do it with a rapier, sort of, but it's very, very difficult, especially when they're building movement speed. Felling Axe is extremely easy to punish. You just have to get a little bit close, bait the one swing, and then it's so slow and there's a huge recovery time, so you can just walk back and then walk back in and then hit them and then back off again and do it again. A Horseman Axe can kind of just be treated like a falchion. They barely lose any movement speed when they have it, so they can chase you down pretty easily with it. And it also swings pretty fast, so it's not able to be weaved in and out of. If you are running away from a barb, you're going to get Francisca axes thrown at you or Achilles lanterns thrown at you. When dodging the Franciscas, I recommend that you do not do constant zigzags, because that slows down your movement speed a bit and then it helps them catch up to you when you do zigzags. So what I'd recommend is that you only juke right when you think they're about to throw the axe. So try to run in a straight line and in an angle so that they kind of try to predict your angle, and then you just juke back right when you think they're about to throw the axe. I think that's probably the best way that I found to dodge Francisca axes. And also jumping so that they hit your legs or try to go under you sometimes. 2 Franciscas can kill you if you're ungeared, and 3 to 4 can kill you if you are geared. So you got to be very careful with those. If they throw an Achilles lantern at you, and if you dodge it, I highly recommend you pick up their lantern so that they're not able to use it again and throw it at you again with an Achilles. But yeah, the combination of Francisca's, Achilles, and the movement speed from Rage makes it extremely difficult to fight and run away from barbs. So that's why I recommend you just don't fight them at all. You will avoid so many deaths if you just never engage barbarians again, which is hard to do sometimes, I will admit. But that's why you play safe, you keep doors open behind you. They also recently buffed Barbarian. They made Savage Roar give minus 50% physical power bonus if it lands on you. But, luckily you have Cutthroat, which counters that. But still, recommend you just don't fight Barbarians. That's the simple answer. Just don't fight Barbarians. Okay, so now for fighting Bards. That's with a D, not a B, Bard. For the most part, Bard is a pretty easy matchup, unless you fight them while they have their buffs on. And then it's pretty much impossible. So I'm going to say, do not engage bards head on. I would recommend you engage out of an ambush. same advice kind of goes for every class with this playstyle. This is an ambush class. We are the assassin class, rogue. So ideally, engage out of an ambush. If you can catch a bard with their crossbow out or playing a song, it's just over for them. Cutthroat's going to cancel any songs they are currently playing, which means they can't shriek you right before a fight. But with gear, though, Bard is a very good rogue counter. They swing faster than you, they are tankier than you, they deal more damage than you, they can pop you out of stealth with AoE damage. They're basically just better Slayer fighters. Bard is basically a slightly better Slayer fighter that's harder to play. So you cannot win in a straight 1v1, just like with a Slayer fighter, without playing to your advantage with an ambush. If they know you're near them, they'll probably try to play a song really quickly, like Shriek or something. So in that kind of scenario, what you should do is just push them really fast in stealth and then try to cancel the song with Cutthroat before they finish it. I would say do not engage if they have a melee weapon out and they know you're nearby. Yeah, bards are very strong with their buffs on, so just do not engage them with their buffs on. But for the most part, most bards are going to fold unless they're geared. Alright, so fighting fighters. So my simple answer for this is do not engage plate and be very careful about engaging Slayer fighters. That's the simple answer. The long answer, plate is nearly impossible to kill. PDR plate is nearly impossible to kill unless you are very geared and are running weak point and are also running thrust. Even then, you are at risk of them just turning and like 2 to 3 tapping you with a falchion faster than you can kill them. If you can catch them with a crossbow out, or healing, or third party them, that would be ideal for fighting fighters. But otherwise, I just wouldn't even try. I very often find that if you open up on a fighter and then hit them a few times and then back off doing like a hit and run thing, they'll just run away and team up with someone to try and hunt you down. Happens all the time. Fighters love to team with people. They love it. It's their favorite activity to do in this game. Never engage plate head on. It's just suicide if you do that. Also be wary that they have a crossbow that can one-tap you if it headshots you, so be aware. You're not safe at range against plate fighters. I stopped fighting plate for the most part about halfway through this wipe, and once I did that, my amount of deaths has probably halved. It's difficult to fight the urge to not engage fighters when you get an ambush on them, but I recommend you just hit them once and then run away. My deaths have gone down so much once I stopped fighting fighters. It sucks. It sucks being able to have no counterplay, really, to a class in this game. But, that's the way it is. I recommend you just don't fight them. If you invest a lot of money, a lot of gold, getting plus 11 true fizz, you can sort of fight them with, like, throwing knives by slowly chipping them down. Or fight them with hand crossbows with a bunch of true fizz. That's possible, too. But, expensive. As for Slayer Fighter, they can literally kill you in 0.4 seconds with a 2-hit combo. So you kind of just have to do a hit and run thing with Slayer fighters too. Even with a perfect ambush, they'll take like 4 hits to kill, and then they can just turn and 2-tap you in half a second. They're kind of squishy, but they are extremely high damage output, like barbarians, and also very fast with sprint. So I would say just treat Slayer fighters like they're barbarians. Only engage out of a ambush in an ideal scenario, and do not stick around very long if they survive the initial ambush. Yeah, that's pretty much how you fight Slayer Fighter. Alright, the Rogue matchup, the Mirror matchup. So, one of my main sources of deaths is other rogues. Other rogues they're always going to be a huge threat. Even naked rogues can sometimes cause some pretty close calls, so you gotta be careful. But generally, the rogue versus rogue matchup is primarily whoever gets the first hit and whoever has better gear. It's kind of a boring matchup, but that's kind of just how it is. If you get opened on first, you're probably going to lose. So as a result, being better at positioning and timing is really essential to killing other rogues, because if you get the ambush, you just win. So being better at ambushing will help you beat other rogues. Cutthroat will remove Rupture and make it so they can't use Hide or Smoke Pot, which helps with that matchup. But if you get the ambush, you win. But generally, more rogue players are going to be more aware of their surroundings than the other classes, so it's usually harder to ambush rogues. But creep helps a lot with that. But if you come face to face with another rogue and you're both like see each other and are looking at each other, thinking if you're going to fight each other, I would say the most wise thing you can do is to not engage, because fights like that can very often just go 50-50. And even if you do win, there's a chance that you just die to rupture or poison ticks. So I never face dual rogues if I can help it, because it is a losing matchup for both of you. Unless you're very overgearing them. If you encounter a hand crossbow rogue with smoke pot, just treat them like a ranger. Don't fight them at range. Position yourself to ambush them. Pretty simple. Don't chase them really. Other than that, the way to not get ambushed is to really just learn the maps and develop a ton of game knowledge through playing a lot, and that just comes with time. Obviously new players are going to complain about dying to rogues and stealth a lot because they don't have a lot of game knowledge and they are not using their ears. Use your ears and you will not die to as many rogues. If there are mobs in a room, there isn't a rogue in the room. So, mobs in a room generally means pretty safe. You're not going to be landmined. If mobs are in a weird spot that they usually don't walk to and they're just standing still, that probably means that someone is just stealth nearby and the mobs are waiting for their stealth to drop so they can just re-aggro onto them. But yeah, that comes with just a lot of game knowledge, knowing where mobs generally walk to in their natural movement. If a lot of torches are off in a room, probably means there's a rogue in there or something. Most people don't do this at high ranks. If you hear footsteps and then they stop, don't just assume that they walked out of range. They could have just stopped to listen to your footsteps and are positioning themselves and waiting to ambush you. This is what I do. If I hear footsteps, I stop, I crouch, and then I position myself to try and get an ambush on wherever I hear those footsteps coming from. Always look through windows of doors before opening them. This is just another safe thing you can do to try and counter being ambushed by rogues. Doesn't always work, People can be hiding right underneath the doorway. That's what I like to do. Is I like to crouch right beneath the window and then look down. Sometimes when if my ambush is off cooldown or hide is off cooldown, I'll do that. And then I've killed a few people like that before. But yeah, rogue is a pretty hard matchup. Rogue versus rogue is pretty tough. All right, so fighting cleric. Cleric is not a very big threat to rogues. They're kind of hard to kill. It's also kind of hard for them to kill you. You have to be careful about not getting hit when you fight clerics, but that's usually pretty easy because they have really slow movement speed and zero ways to increase their movement speed. And also all of their weapons are very easy attack patterns to recognize. And as a result, they're also really easy to abuse because you can just weave in and out of attacks and stab them once and then back off. Some weapons you have to be more careful about, like Wormwall, because if you get hit by a Wormwall once, it's going to slow you a ton, and you're not going to be able to get out of range. They're just going to keep swinging it, and you're going to die. So if you get hit by a Wormwall once, you need to fucking start swinging, or you're going to die. But if you catch a cleric with their book out, you can usually kill them before they kill you. But if you see that the cleric is fully buffed, or is currently buffing himself to fight you, I would just recommend not fighting them. Run away, wait for the buffs to wear off. They only get so many buffs. One big threat that clerics have against rogues is their Mika Vista ability. I forgot what it's called. It's a ranged ability that does a ton of magic damage, and it slows you if it hits you. Very risky if they're running that ability to fight them. Not a lot of clerics run this, but it is a pretty strong rogue counter. You can kind of check if a cleric is running it by getting in medium range of them and then backing off a few times. They might try and cast it on you, and then when you get out of medium range, it'll stop casting it. It'll make an audible sound, but it won't go off, and then that'll tell you that they're running Mika Vista. They'll say, Mika Vista, Julian, and then it won't go off, but you'll know they're running it. If they aren't running it, then it's almost guaranteed they're running Smite instead, and Smite on their weapon will 2-tap you, so you should just run away as soon as that activates and, let that wear off. Cutthroat does disable Smite, but it is pretty buggy, and I think they can instantly reactivate it once Cutthroat ends. And I think that clerics have less duration of debuffs, so Cutthroat doesn't really last that long on them. It's not that useful. They also have a spell called Holy Strike, which makes a big AoE on the ground, wherever they choose. It has a medium range, does a lot of damage. If you get hit, you're probably going to lose 40% of your health and be slowed for a second. But it's very easy to bait this spell because you can just pretend like you're running straight at them to fight them. Pretend you're just W keying at them, and then they'll start loading Holy Strike. It's a very slow build up the sound of Holy Strike. It'll be like bah. It's kind of slow, but as soon as the spell finishes loading, you should just back up, and then they're gonna try and cast it in front of you, and then when you back off, it'll dodge it. If you get caught in it, it's a pretty big AoE though. So if you get caught in it, you kind of want to stick around in medium range so you can jump out into longer range when they cast this. You just have to bait it 3 times, and then they won't have the spell anymore. They only get 4 casts. They also have a spell called Earthquake that makes the ground all shaky. If you're near them when they cast that, just stand still until it ends, or you're going to die trying to get out of it. Most clerics don't run this in solos, though, so unlikely that you're going to run into this. But yeah, for the most part, cleric is pretty easy to fight. You just kind of have to ambush them, back up a few times, and then when they pull their book out to start healing, you just run back in and kill them. Not a very difficult matchup. Alright, so now fighting Ranger. So Ranger is a pretty easy matchup for Rogue. I haven't died to a single Ranger this entire wipe, and I've played like 800 matches, so I think that says something about how easy they are to counter. And I really don't think it's Rogue specific either. I think they're just in general pretty easy to counter. Really, the way to fight Ranger is to not run at them as soon as you see them like a fucking NPC. What you should do is use corners to hide your silhouette when you use hide, and then push around corners when you think they're close. If you get in melee range of a Ranger, they're just dead. I mean, that's just how it is. Unless you aren't running Cutthroat, then there's a chance that they quick shot or multi shot and one shot you really fast. But with Cutthroat, they can't use a shotgun or quick shot, and they're literally free loot if you get in melee range. There is a small chance that they pull out a spear, and that is probably the smartest thing they can do in a melee situation, but usually they don't. And that scenario is pretty scary because the spear does a shit ton of damage. So I'd say just try and kill them before they kill you in that scenario. If you're pushing someone and you're not sure what class it is, but you have a suspicion that it's a ranger, I would say you should watch the ground for traps, because a lot of rangers put traps behind where they push, where they're like making paths through. And it's pretty easy to know if you're pushing a ranger because usually there will be the sound of multiple arrows firing off quickly. All the other classes pretty much clear with melee weapons, so if you hear arrows being used to kill PvE, it's generally a ranger. So when I hear that sound of multiple arrows firing off quickly, I know it's just going to be free loot, as long as I look for traps. So try to crouch up to the closest corner to where you think that the ranger is, and then stealth and push around the corner, and they'll probably hold the angle with their bow if they hear you. So I'd recommend crouching towards them and looking down while pushing in case they decide to fire off a preemptive arrow, or, and then your hitbox will be lower, so it'll be harder to hit you with that preemptive arrow. I recommend not fighting rangers in large open rooms. Goblin Caves has very few large open rooms, so great map for fighting rangers. If you walk into a room and you see a ranger on the other side of a room, like it's a large room, and you see a ranger on the other side of the room, and they see you, I'd say just walk back out the way you came in. It's not worth trying to push them. You're playing at a very large disadvantage, and it's just not worth it. But yeah, other than that, Ranger is a very easy matchup. Okay, next class is Wizard. So, like Ranger, I haven't died to a single Wizard this wipe on my main. I have died to them on alts while ungeared, but I've never died to a Wizard while I was geared. They're literally loot pinatas if you are running Cutthroat. They're completely screwed if you get into melee range and you're running Cutthroat. Well, maybe not completely. There's a small chance that they know what they're doing and pull out a crystal sword, but that very, very rarely happens. And if they do pull out crystal sword, just back off, unless you're already on top of them, in which case you'll probably still just win the straight duel. But fight Wizard kind of like how you fight a ranger. Use line of sight, abuse corners to hide your silhouette, to push them. You can honestly get away with holding W at some Wizards sometimes because they'll just start casting Magic Missile, and then you cancel it as soon as you hit them with Cutthroat, and then they die. Very high-end geared Wizards will likely have a good bit of movement speed, and they'll be running Ice Shield, which slows you if you hit them. And if you do not have high movement speed too, then they will be able to outrun you if you open on them out of an ambush, and then once Cutthroat wears off, they will have an opportunity to fight you at range. So Wizards for the most part are extremely free unless it's a high-end geared Wizard, in which case you need like 340 movement speed at least to guarantee the matchup. But I've killed many top-ranked Wizards with cheap builds that just had a lot of movement speed and Cutthroat. The one counter to Cutthroat Rogue, though, is Ignite Wizard. If you see a Wizard with a Rondelle and a Crystal Ball, you should just have an alarm bell going off in your head, and you should be extra careful because that's most likely an Ignite Wizard. Ignite casts very quickly, so if you're pushing them, more than likely they're going to be able to cast Ignite off on time and be able to start stabbing you, and you will die faster than you can kill them because Ignite Wizards do a ton of melee damage. And you also get double slowed by the Ignite damage and the stab damage, so you cannot run away from Ignite Wizards once you get hit. You're locked into the fight, and you're probably going to die. But the best way to fight these wizards is to just ambush them before they get ignite off. If they get ignite off, just run away and re-engage again with better positioning. But yeah, wizards for the most part, very easy matchup. Okay, and the last class that we're going to talk about is fighting Warlock. Warlocks are a pretty scary matchup for rogues, and they're one of my main sources of deaths as a rogue, the others being Barb, Fighter, and Rogue. A Warlock, you have to play extremely carefully against them because even though they are a caster, they are not weak in melee range. And this is primarily because they have access to falchions, which are extremely strong one-hand weapons, an ability called Blow of Corruption, and a perk called Dark Reflection. So, Blow of Corruption is this ability they activate. It makes their next melee hit deal a ton of magic damage, and if they have any amount of gear, this will one-shot you. I'm telling you, it will one-shot you. When they cast it, it looks like they clap their hands together, and then their weapon gets all purple. So, do not engage when you see this. It is not worth it. Even if you're running Cutthroat. Even though Cutthroat does remove it, it's not worth it. Because even though you have Cutthroat and your weapon swings faster, the servers are so bad that it's very likely that Cutthroat will lag and not take Blow of Corruption off before it hits you. So if you hit both at the same time, you'll both hit each other, and both of your abilities will affect each other, except you'll die because Blow of Corruption hits you. But if you get an ambush on them with Cutthroat, it's most likely that they'll just die because they don't have Blow of Corruption. Unless they have a falchion. So falchions themselves are just extremely overtuned right now. 2 falchion headshots will kill you as a rogue. And warlocks also run this perk called Dark Reflection, which causes magic damage to be reflected back at attackers when they get hit. And they can increase the damage of this with stacks of a perk called Soul Collector. And Dark Reflection can take 40% of your health if they're geared. And they actually just buffed Soul Collector. It used to cap out at 6 stacks. They get a stack every time they kill a mob, but now it can go up to 10 stacks. So most likely now, Dark Reflection can probably take about 80% of your health out, if it's a very geared Warlock. So what this means is that you are in one-shot range of a single falchion just for hitting the Warlock. AKA, you are always in one-shot range from a falchion Warlock. So the way to fight them is you either get a good ambush off and pray, or you hit them twice out of stealth, maybe even once if you want to be safe, and then just walk away, heal, and then re-engage, since Dark Reflection will not have any more stacks and it'll be weaker. That is what you should do. Caster Warlocks, on the other hand, are pretty free, just like wizards. If you hit them with Cutthroat, they're not going to be able to phantomize or cast spells, and they just fold. Unless they have a bunch of mobs cursed, giving them a bunch of magic healing. It's very unlikely still that they'll survive, but if they are extremely geared and have mobs cursed, there is a chance that they can survive. And you probably need high movement speed too if they're extremely geared. Good caster Warlocks, they're always going to have Flame Walker active, which is the fire trail, and this makes it very hard to ambush them sometimes because you cannot chase them if they have this active, and Cutthroat doesn't cancel it. So ideally, you should wait to ambush a Warlock when they do not have Flame Walker active. Demon Form just came out, also just free loot because Cutthroat cancels it. The only problem is it deals AoE damage to nearby enemies, so it'll knock you out of hide if you try to sneak up on a Demon Form Warlock. But yeah, otherwise, pretty easy matchup, but you just have to be very careful about the falchions. Okay, but yeah, anyway, that's the video. I could talk a lot more about Rogue. I have hundreds of hours playing Rogue, so yeah, if you have any more questions, just come to my stream sometimes or hit me up on Discord. I can answer a lot more. There's a lot of very scenario-specific advice and knowledge that can't really be covered in a video like this. But yeah, this video took a fuck ton of time to edit, so I hope you enjoyed it and learned something.